Yeah, how are you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. How about you all?
Good. Yeah, we were just talking about we just finished a game jam this last week and we placed like kind of okay. I think what Obi put in the chat it was like sixth place out of is it was like 22 or something.
That's
So not
pretty
that
good.
bad.
What you
Yeah,
guys,
pretty good.
what do you guys build?
It was a visual novel game and I think you would like it because it was in a custom engine written in C. So
Why do you think that?
I don't know, something about all the work you do on custom C engines and projects like that.
Uh, yeah, yeah, and like visual novels are actually great space to be in if it's something you guys like. It's like this type of almost like TV series, right? There's always something new to release that the players want to buy. It's a great space to be in. Definitely not the type of design that I'm used to, but
Yeah.
pretty cool space.
Yeah, it was pretty fun because we had to approach it from kind of like making a generic visual novel framework almost, because we had this idea of like, well, we can make a visual novel, but we could kind of make this meta framework that lets us write the visual novel and express it as like a JSON file, and then just have kind of an interpreter loop that iterates over the JSON file and says like, show this character, play this dialogue, do this, like an event system almost.
Nice. Mhm.
So it was pretty cool to build out that kind of like meta framework.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. What about like long tasks? Is it also in the JSON?
What do you mean?
Like, for instance, like on a visual novel, you always have what the character says, right? Maybe like it's a couple of lines of text. That's also JSON. So like when you uh, generate the data structure or you added the data structure, it's like just a long string with escape characters. Is that it?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Got
I
it.
can send you a link actually to look at it after. But yeah, it's pretty much just we express some generic events in the JSON like show this background or show this character, play dialogue from this character. And then for anything kind of like more than that, we have like a custom opcode that we make available that has like arguments that you can add in the JSON and then it gets forwarded into the game. So whoever's making like the actual game themselves, they can define a handler for those like custom events, and then they can
Mhm.
implement stuff like we implemented like screen shaking, like show like a white or red flash, like for stuff like that.
That's super cool. Yeah, definitely send out the link. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, yeah, I can definitely do that. Well, yeah, I guess kind of just to give you some background on us, I guess we are kind of a group of students at the University of Dayton in Ohio. We are mostly focused on game development, but a lot of us are computer scientists, but some of us are not. Some of us are like artists or musicians or aerospace or things like that. But we all kind of collectively work on video games and stuff related to video games. And we're really excited to have you. Would you be able to just give kind of like a brief introduction to yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm uh, love to be here. So on my side, I'm also not a computer science. I have a degree in mechanical engineering. Um, and but like halfway through the course, I knew I wanted to just write software, and that mechanical engineering was not for me. Like on the databases and assembly and C classes, everything felt right and natural. On the anything electrical, I couldn't understand what I was supposed to do. Um, but for many reasons, I just decided to study on my free time, especially because in Brazil, where I came from, there isn't a lot of game development courses. I would say like even in North America, it's not that common to have a really good one. So just start studying on my free time and enter the industry like that. In terms of professional experience, I kind of been all over the place. So when I joined, kind of unfortunately for someone like me, everybody was already using engines, which is a great thing. But also like I think it changes how you make games and types of games you make. So in terms of experience, I kind of joined the mobile industry that was pretty big when I started. A small startup called Wildlife. Now they're pretty big. Working a game called Sniper 3D that had like millions of daily active users. Pretty big game, shooter game for mobile. Then I moved here to North America, Canada, and worked in a game with some ex BioWare folks called Nightingale, more large scale AAA game in Unreal. pretty cool stuff there. Unreal's an engine that taught me just by reading their code. It's impressive what they do in this engine. And after that, work on like PC games, work on web games, work at Unity itself as a senior engineer there. And since like the last 4 years ish, I kind of dropped the career path and started doing my own thing. So I co-founded a company called Proxima that I've been there for. I was there for 3 years, where we made games trying to push the tech boundary. Specifically, I think the thing that we built that resonated more with players is a game called Suck Up that you will find if you search it on YouTube. It kind of went viral, and it was the first game that used generative AI in the actual gameplay. Like, we didn't produce any assets with generative AI. The generative AI was the feature. You were a vampire trying to get into people's homes, trying to convince them to get into people's homes so you could eat them. And like super streamable, like super like indie style game, kind of went viral. Uh, Went really well for multiple reasons that I'm happy to get into later. Uh, Kind of decided I prefer doing my own thing. Um, so since I think this year, I've been mostly contracting on the side and trying to figure out the next thing I'm going to build. This engine and educational content on the internet is a big part of this, and that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I there's a lot of leads for us to talk about. I guess kind of starting from the beginning, like I know you weren't classically computer science, but it sounds like potentially when you started getting into working on games and working on engines, you kind of already maybe knew that you had a predisposition to custom engines compared to like off the shelf. Is that true? And I guess if so, when did you kind of realize that you enjoy working with custom tooling more?
Yeah, that's very interesting. So yeah, I think like because mechanical engineering, the the programming that we do uh, work on this area is C, like it's embedded, right? So first programming language I learned C on like lowest uh, level possible, thinking about the hardware that I was working on. And I mean, I started engineering because I love math and physics, so it all added up beautifully at the time. So when I started to study games, I naturally just, okay, let me go to C++. At the time, I was like, okay, C++ is better than C, right? There's two plus in it, so it must be better. So, took like a direct X9 book and started studying and started making my own games. That's how I started. But then when I started looking into how I could get into the industry, everything was Unity. So I was like, okay, fine, let me learn this engine. Was pretty great, to be honest. I think engines are a great way to learn to make games. They kind of remove all the mental overhead that is very overwhelming in the beginning about the especially the graphics APIs. They're kind of terrible. Um, so I kind of started learning Unity. I liked it a lot, and I kind of found this middle ground where I would use the engine as a renderer and a editor system, but I would still like write a lot of stuff from scratch in the engine. Like, I wouldn't use the rigid body. I would just use the physics uh, collisions functions and just build the character controller from there, for instance. Um, so yeah, like pretty much in the beginning, I think because that's how I approach uh, programming, I always feel like I want to understand everything that's going on. I think the hardest thing that I did in my career was an internship that I had to make like a email notification stuff in Ruby on Rails, and I was like, I don't even know what that is. And then like, I, I know like in Ruby on Rails you add a attribute or something, and then the HTTP call just works. And like at the time, I was like, man, how does that work? It was like actually harder than just if I had to code it from scratch. It's kind of crazy. I think just how your brain works sometimes.
Yeah. I think that's interesting. That's something I think about too, is when you're working on other people's tools, there's kind of these multiple layers of abstraction, and sometimes it gets so high that you don't even know like what you're doing and if why something doesn't work. Like if you run into a problem, it's like almost impossible to solve, and you're basically like stuck in someone else's sandbox. So it sounds like that's kind of been your experience as well.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I always say there are two types of knowledge, right? There is eternal knowledge, like which is the foundations, right? Calculus was invented 600 years ago. It still works because there's something true about the nature of mathematics and how that works. Uh, any library that we use today is going to die in the next 100 years, right? Because it's not like it's a very specific um, parochial solution to a problem that might be a really good solution, but it's not something that uh, lasts for a long time. And I think that that's part of it, right? When you learn the fundamentals, you learn them from forever. You can apply it anywhere. When you learn a tool or a library, you're trying to learn whoever whoever wrote it was thinking about it and trying to solve, and it might be a really good solution for your problem as well. But yeah, like you said, it's almost more confusing sometimes because there's nothing that you can build from first principles there. You kind of have to read the documentation or see tutorials, and then, oh, okay, I have to, you know, toggle this checkbox and it works, or I have to, add this component and it works, things like that.
Yeah. I think that's really interesting, especially kind of like libraries are relatively short-lived. I feel like I'm thinking of mostly web development where there's like a new hot like JavaScript front-end library very often. But I guess in the language space, there are a subset of languages that have stuck around for a really long time, like C, C++. These languages have lasted decades. And I think on C's part, it's mostly because of its has kind of this fundamental simplicity that lets developers kind of coerce it into whatever situation they need to use it. But I'm curious if you think that over time we'll see a shift in the languages being used. Mostly thinking about like kind of newer languages that add things like memory safety or different patterns that might be more popular. So things like Rust, Zig, Odin. Do you see kind of this base of common languages shifting over time?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, we should be improving as a field, right? And so I think so. I hope so. Maybe in the next 50, we have a low level language that is more modern than C and C++, and it did took over and it's reliable. Um, I think it's, I mean, maybe we don't think about that much, but computer science kind of very young science, right? Especially if you think about it, since the actual first computer companies started, the way we know about them. So there's a lot to evolve still. And yeah, like if you think about the history, right? It started with punch cards, then assembly, then a lot of people were trying to make programming languages. C is stuck. I think for many reasons that uh, I don't think I can explain well, but one of them is it was the right abstraction, right? So you can think about, like a graph or a curve where you increase the abstraction and you increase your productivity, and you can imagine how this curve looks like. Most people imagine that it's like maybe an exponential, like, oh, the more abstraction, the more productive you are, but it's probably more like a curve like this, right? Or where there is a maximum point that you start to lose productivity. And C definitely hit that very hard, like on the productive productivity add part, but it could be much better, right? There are so many things in C. Starting with the standard library that makes you less productive as a fact, that makes your code less safe as a fact. Uh, that I think languages like especially Zig and Noding are trying to solve, and I think they're doing a great job. Rust a little less. I think Rust is more like trying to fix C++, and I think C++ just made bad decisions that like the C++ created problems that don't even have to exist, and now we're trying to solve the problems that C++ created. For instance, with Rust, which sounds like a genius idea if you think the problems are real, but the problems are not real. I'm talking about RAII and stuff like that, the way they choose to manage memory. Uh, so like it's almost like you started in the wrong direction and now you're doubling down. I am much more a fan of the direction of Zig and Odin, where they kind of took a step back. Okay, see this a lot of things right. What did it do wrong? Okay, that and that. Let's fix that and move forward from there. So I hope one of these languages or both languages we end up using most of the time in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of curious. So I recently started messing around with Zig a little bit. I've only worked with it for a couple days, but there's some interesting patterns that I've noticed, particularly related to kind of a little bit of object-oriented features. And I'm curious, as someone who works mostly with C, what your thoughts are on Zig having, methods inside of enums and structs. I saw some discourse on forums where people are like, you should not be kind of bleeding like a little bit of OOP features into a language like this that's supposed to be data-oriented and very simple. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, yeah, probably. I think it's a bit of a preference thing. I don't think like OOP is awful. Like it's fine to have an object, right? Data gets clumped sometimes, and it is kind of convenient that I can object name dot function name sometimes. I think where this breaks is when you're trying to architect complex large systems where like even the initial idea of okay, one object is one thing already breaks down because like you have like multiple concepts working together. And also if you're thinking about the computer, there's no objects at all, right? It's just all memory and instructions. So I think the reason I gave this background is I think the way I think about this question is, do we want to give the user the option and trust them to make the right decision so they can use it when it makes sense and they can not use it when it doesn't, or not, like C or Odin, for instance, where there is no option to create an object, to create member functions. um Probably my preference is more like Odin's direction where you have no option. I think simplicity is awesome. Go is another example of a language that does that really well. um, for their field, right? They started simple, they kept it simple as far as I know about it. And I'm more about this direction of less choice in this sense because it's more mental overhead. It's the same problem with C++, right? There are so many ways to do the same thing that I'm like I feel the mental overhead of just trying to figure out what the right way is. Uh, so I like the simplicity. That said, I think probably other people disagree, to be honest, and so it's fine that Zig is going that direction, at least in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is a really interesting thread because there's a lot of parallels between programming languages and engines in this regard, where you're given a tool and it has whatever amount of features. Like if you're given a programming language that has a million features, there's a bunch of different ways for you to do something complex versus if you're kind of given an engine that has a million features like Unity, it's very general purpose. There's 100 ways you could do the same thing. Um, I don't know. Does that seem like kind of an apt comparison?
Oh, 100%. Unity, there's a joke on the Unity space where they say there is like 10 official ways to do something, like that Unity tells you to do it. And that's probably true. It's one of the reasons that the engine has been a mess for the last 7 or 8 years. And yeah, I totally agree. That it's like this idea that more features equals better, which is something I grew to disagree with. Like, if you make a software and it solves a problem really well, do you need to keep adding features to it that just because? From an economic standpoint, you want to do it because then you charge subscriptions and then like you always have users and stuff like that. But from a technology standpoint, my fridge works pretty well. I don't think they added any features that mattered since the last 50 years or so. And I'm pretty happy with it, right? So like it's the same for software. Like if you are running a text editor, how many features you really need in a text editor other than editing text super fast, going to definition, stuff like that. Everything else, like Git integration, yeah, sure, but I don't need that. Um, you know, Even like the AI things, potentially more useful depending on how you embedded it. But in any case, it's all this idea like just making more features for the sake of features, and you don't consider the overhead for the user, overhead for the software, and even like if there actually there's any value add there, um, which is just something hard to fix, to be honest. But I wish more people were building on the opposite direction these days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned kind of Unity becoming like a mess in the past like 7 years. I'm kind of curious what your experience was working on Unity as a senior engineer, and then kind of the philosophy driving the development then, and then up until now after you've left.
Yeah, so I mean, I had a great time working at Unity. I think it's a was a great company to work at, especially because I think any companies that make something where there are millions of users, there's a lot of joy of like having your software help a lot of people, right? Even though I was in the engine team, I was more on like a special team where like you help other companies make products with Unity. Like Hearthstone was a Blizzard game that was a client, a Unity client, and Amazon was a Unity client at the time. So I was more in that space, like building with on top of Unity. But in any case, in terms of the direction, I am like sad because Unity started really strong. It started as the true indie engine. The co-founders, which I don't know their names, but the CEO and CTO, I think they did something really well. They basically did, the engine for the little guy back in the time where every engine was a triple A, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars license cost. Unreal used to be that case. So they started really strong. And I'd say I felt that the engine was pretty good for its time until 2018, 17, where I don't know the details, right? But looking from the outside, it looks like the development team, the engine team had ideas of how the engine could be way better, but also a lot of people wanted to take the company public and then they went everywhere. So they changed the rendering pipeline. They had one, now they have three. They still have three. They started building a UI system that's somehow slower than the original AI system, and it's taking like 8 years. Like how it is like I don't know how it's possible like to spend like 8 years in a UI system. Uh, and then they had some great ideas like dots, for instance. They were trying to like push. So for anyone that doesn't know, right, dots, data-oriented tech stack in the Unity side, inspired by Mike Acton's talk on the CPPCon 2014. Amazing talk. I encourage everyone to listen to it. They even hired Mike Acton, and I was like, man, now Unity is gonna be like it's gonna be uh, fighting with Unreal one-to-one because they had all the right ideas about making it as easy as possible to write super fast software, and somehow I think like the team wasn't able to sell those features because in the end, what we have again 8 years later is almost nobody uses dots. Uh, you don't get that much performance out of dots. You have a bunch of features that never finished, like the UI system, the rendering pipeline is still there. And if you remove all those features and you open Unity 6 and Unity 2017 or Unity 5, there isn't much difference. If you've been someone that used Unity for a long time, you're still using the same functions. You're still writing code the same ways. So you're basically working on a like yeah on a very very old code base with a lot of mistakes that is not getting faster. It's getting slower. Uh, so yeah, that's my like very long take on this. It's a hard problem. Like I don't want to like talk shit about Unity in that sense, but I'm just disappointed really. Like it used to be a great engine and somehow yeah, I think they lost themselves in the way, at least in my opinion.
Yeah. And kind of a big, I mean, the big controversy recently, like on the management side, was the runtime fee, like the proposed runtime fee, where they would be charging developers for every launch of the game. I feel like that also kind of put the nail in the coffin a little bit. It seems like people nowadays are maybe viewing like Godot as kind of like the indie, like true free engine.
Yeah, I think so. Definitely Godot has capitalized a lot on the mistakes of Unity because the engines are super similar. And for the longest time, Godot was just like the worst version of Unity. But now I don't think that's the case anymore. And yeah, like Unity became big by making a great engine, but recently they started caring too much about ads. And again, like you went public, you have like shareholders to uh, please, and they forgot that their main products, their main users are like game developers that need the best tool possible to make an engine. Um, and yeah, now like others have capitalized on this. Even Unreal, like they grew Unreal shares for indie developers grew in the past years because a lot of indie developers are moving to Unreal because of one, it's a great tool. Two, you can start for free for the longest time, and like you have the Epic Game Store and all that. Um, And Godot as well. Like I don't have a lot of experience in Godot, but on the very little experience that I have, they're very much still on the place where the engine is lightweight enough, it's productive enough. Um, they seem to be building features for the engine instead of building whatever else like cloud services and stuff like that that really nobody wants. To be totally honest, at least I don't, and I'm a developer, so yeah.
Yeah. I guess during your time at Unity, I don't know if you can share, but were there kind of any interesting problems or integrations that you worked with these kind of like other businesses on building on top of the engine?
No specific technical things. Like when you build with Unity, you get used to the workarounds, and that's true for every tech. That's true for Unreal as well. Um, yeah, like the only thing that I can say is that, in my view, the company seemed that it was lacking objectives at the time. Like a lot of changes in direction, and from my perspective, and to be fair, I left Unity before they got the new CEO, which, at least from the public facing side, seems to want to go back to building a great engine. So let's see where that leads, right? I think we're gonna wait for a couple of years. But like in general, I'll say this, like that takes me back to the C engine. That takes me back to like things that Casey Muratori, if you guys know about him, like the guy that made Handmade Hero, talks about. We had engines like Unity and Unreal for 20 plus years now. We I hope, like we talk about C, right? I love C. I hope we get a much better C, and I hope we get a much better engine in the future. And the truth is, the only way to make something really better is to just start from scratch. You can't you know, incrementally shift a ship that is like 50 tons, 50,000 tons probably, and try to change its direction. You have to start with a boat and just move really fast in another direction.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think this is a good transition to kind of another engine related thing that I wanted to ask you about is like as far as making custom engines, obviously it takes a lot of time and knowledge and expertise. Do you who is it worth making an engine? So indie, double A, triple A, who should be building their own engines versus who should be gravitating towards tools like Unreal?
Yeah, I'll say this. The simplest way to put it is, if you if you're someone that likes, if you're a game programmer, if you like coding and the technical aspect of it, you're curious about it, you should be at least considering making an engine or using a lower level framework. No, use Raylib, where you have to build more stuff from scratch. Um, if you're not, if you're a game designer, if you're an artist, by all means, you should be using an engine. That's what these tools were created for. Uh, Even like AAA studios, right? They used to make their own engines, but by the nature of how the business work, you have massive teams. Most of the team are not technical. Um, it makes a lot of sense to use an engine, and we even saw this with the makers of Cyberpunk. Forgot the name of the company.
CD Project Red.
CD Projekt Red, exactly. They had their own engine, which was a pretty hardcore engine. It was pretty good, great tech there, and they still moved to Unreal. And I assume like it was a decision that they did not take lightly. Um, but again, like they're worrying about making a massive game with so much content uh, that it makes sense, right? So that's the thing. Like you said, it does take time. It does take expertise. We need people doing that. It doesn't have to be everybody doing that. Uh, the main thing that I keep saying is that, again, if you are this type of person, don't let everybody tell you not to do it. If you want to learn how to make engines, go and make your engine. Go and learn. Also, don't think about making a Unity and then you make a game. Like when you're making your engine, you're just making a game with code, like you guys did for the Game Jam with the visual novel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I don't know, the shift towards engines like Unreal. It feels like Epic has just got so much money over the past few years from products like Fortnite that they can just throw it at making this huge feature complete engine. And it seems like it's good for certain games and good for certain studios, but it seems like a lot of people sometimes are not happy with it and think maybe it's bloated or things like Nanite are slow. I'm curious, like, what you think about that.
Yeah, it's really yeah, it is like Unreal has simultaneously amazing tech, um, truly amazing tech, and potentially bad tech depending on how you use it. So yeah, like regardless of how fast, how good the Unreal engineers are, the engine programmers, and how good they want to make the engine, they have again a 20-year-old code base there with some architecture that they can't break because there are many customers using the engine. And again, software gets bloated, right? So that's very much like the feeling like if anybody used Unreal, it's crazy because the engine, the base systems, the animation system, the physics system, they tend to scale well. But the actor, which is the building piece for making your game, the thing you interact with if you're a game developer, does not scale well. Like you put like a thousand actors, uh, no, a thousand like moving actors on your scene. The amount of like one, I think like each actor is like one more than 1 megabyte, like even empty, and the amount of processing power they take is like ridiculous. So it's kind of like sad that the building block of Unreal is already so slow. And like every serious Unreal programmer knows if you have to do any optimization, just start by nuking the actors. Okay, I'll just like write this in C++, no actors, just data. Maybe I have one actor that kind of manages like a big chunk of data. Um, so again, it goes back to like a big engines, generic engines, old code bases being very bloated, which limits the types of games you can make. So like you said, Unreal is great to make multiplayer, couple dozen up to 100, 200 players on a server, 3D person or first person shooters ish games. That is a very popular genre. This is probably 10% of what gamers want or less. And that's what the engine is very much made to help you do. If you want to make a RTS in Unreal, you're going to have a very bad time. I'll say that.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to give kind of an opportunity to pivot to talking about your own work. So I don't know if many people in this call are familiar, but kind of you got a lot of attention on some work recently you shared where you compared your custom C engine animation system with Unity's in a web build and kind of
Yep.
showed that building this tech from scratch could give you like a massive difference in frames and a massive difference in performance. Would you be able to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I can. I'm sure people can find the link, but I'll just go ahead and share on the talk here for anyone that didn't see it. Um, yeah. So here's a couple of things. One, definitely did not expect this thing to blow up that much. Uh, a lot of people said that was like I was rage baiting. I was like, man, I was just writing like I was a programmer complaining. I was basically saying exactly what I said in the post. Hey, look how bad this thing is that like a guy on the weekend can just like write something better without even trying. And and the other thing is this code is not even optimized at all. Uh, and the reason Unity cannot even compete with this code that I wrote is not because again the engineers there are bad, not at all. Is because there's so much code to run, right? So that was the point of the post to begin with. Again, trying to show people, hey, when you write your stuff from scratch, one, is not that hard. Two, you don't even have to worry about optimization that much because whatever you write is already many times faster, usually. Uh, if you at least have some knowledge of optimization of performance, that you end up like writing something that's way faster. Um, so that was like the point of the post. Since then, a lot of people even jumped in. So I tested with Godot. Godot did a little bit better. Looks like an agent called Defold. Uh, not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Uh, Actually does better than me on the web. So I'll have to go back and really optimize my system. They have some pretty good ideas there on their code. It's open source, so anybody can read the code and learn from them as well. But yeah, that's the point, right? I think a lot of people, especially people that are outside of engine programming, they look at the tech they have and they assume it's the state of art. And honestly, like most of the software that we have there nowadays is so far from the state of art that is almost funny. Like there's so much improvement that can be made um, if we start if we write a couple of things from scratch.
Yeah. Well, I guess so. What was the original motivation behind that demo, and do you have any future plans for it?
I do. So I think that's a great question. So no, I think probably the way I talk, maybe again, if you guys know folks like Ginger Build, Casey, a lot of folks, Ryan, a lot of folks that are vocal about the quality of software that shaped a lot of what I think as well, that I agree a lot of um, with what they say. Um, they keep saying, like how software could be better and how everything is bloated. And I feel the same way. And for the longest time, like I said, every game I release was in professionally, has been in engines. And just recently, I thought, hell, I'm just gonna do something right with this. So I'm started. The main to answer your question, the main goal with this engine is one, I'll just like build something that is lightweight and is fast, and I'll keep sharing about it. And real soon, I'll share more in-depth technical uh, articles about it on the website. And that's the main thing to start. Just really just trying to push a little bit in the direction of the future that I want to see for the new generation, showing that it's not that hard, trying to share some of the learnings that I have. In terms of actual commercial engine, that's TBD. Um, like I said before, the world doesn't need another engine. I think that is like the ones that we have. So if there is going to be another engine, it has to be fundamentally different. I have a couple ideas about that, but I'm not sure yet if it's the direction I want to go. That I'm happy to talk about. But one thing that is on the short term, I'll probably make like a, a small meme game for the web with this, like that I'll just share on X for fun. And again, it'll be like more on this direction where, hey, you can write this. You don't need a 50-person team to write this. It's way better than the other software you see out there and you pay thousands of dollars for. And it has all the features that you want. Because one of the biggest excuses that I get is that, oh, okay, your animation system is faster, but Unity has more features, which is an argument that doesn't hold, to be honest. But fine, I'll just like keep building, and then you release the entire game with this, and then hopefully people that are interested see and get motivated in writing their own stuff as well, like you guys do.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanna actually probe on something you just mentioned, but I want to reiterate that anybody's free to ask a question at any point. So if you want to just raise your hand in the chat and ask something or put it in the chat, feel free. But I was kind of curious. You mentioned in passing, like, the world doesn't need another engine. If it did, it should be fundamentally different. I'm kind of curious I mean, what your ideas are for something like that, and what properties a new engine should have in order to avoid the pitfalls of these kind of existing off-the-shelf solutions.
Uh, okay, I'll say this. Very brainstormy, open-ended ideas there.
Yeah.
I'll say that let's think about what the engines that we have do not do super well. One of the things that they do not do super well is that they give you a generic system that doesn't scale when you write the code, right? Um, Another thing that I'll point out is that one thing that they do well for their time, but I'm not sure if it's going to scale that much for the new generation, is they write these complex UIs, graphical UIs tools, uh, with a lot of buttons, a lot of options, a lot of everything. It's overwhelming to learn. That's true for Unreal. That's true for Unity. So, and we have actually AI technology right now that I don't think like I think there are good and bad things about it. Um, but one of the good things is that you could like have a different type of interface that helps you code or even do stuff, helps you learn in a completely different way. So, and final point to wrap up and share a couple ideas. I thought I used to teach game development in Portuguese, my modern language, a couple of years ago, and a lot of people on YouTube would like comment and say, "Oh, can I do that on mobile?" I was like, what do you mean? Like, yeah, you can build games for mobile. They said, no, I want to make the game on my phone. And at the time, I was like, man, of course not. Like, you have to program and like these things are complicated. But now you kind of can, to be honest, right? You could, like, if you think about just a creative person, right? Someone that doesn't want to learn how to program, you could have a software, an app that allows you to make a game on your phone. Then you're kind of dragging stuff around, and like when you write code, the AI can write it for you and maybe show the code in a more abstract way. So that's how I imagine a modern next generation game engine being. Um, whether something I write, I don't know, but yeah, I'm actually curious to hear your guys' perspective on this. I don't think I've shared that. That's the first time I shared this publicly.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. It reminds me, I remember the MIT visual programming language Scratch, I think had a iPad version of their, I guess like runtime. Like this is probably like 10 years ago. But it made me kind of interested to think about, well, what if there was like a visual programming kind of like framework engine environment kind of bundled into a game? So kind of like Gary's Mod or Sandbox, where it's like you can make a game mode or make a game and share it in kind of like a common app, and then anybody can kind of browse and play these experiences together. I think something like that would be really cool.
Yeah, I think yeah, like even ideas we had in the past, right? I think the Tony Hawk 2, if anybody played this on the PS1, had the level editor, and the level editor like felt like playing a game. It was you would build the editor with build the level with the controls, and yeah, like I think it's similar to the idea that you just brought up. It is a game, but you can kind of make the game within the game, which we've had many examples of this in the past. But then you solve the programming problem as well, because for any of these examples, you're really just modding the game. You're changing most of the time. You're just changing the assets. You're changing some of the configurations. And if you want to go hardcore, maybe you can like there's some scripting binding thing that the game supports that you can write, and then is when it gets really technical. Maybe a future agent can both be as easy to pick up as this those modding level editors that we know, but also allow you to make a different game if you want. What that looks like is a great question to ask. But yeah, like that's if anybody's making an engine out there, think about that. Don't remake Unity. We already have Unity. We already have Unreal. Try to make something different.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think there's kind of maybe an untapped market on specifically making the games on the phone because like products like Roblox have a huge presence of people who are making these reshareable games. And I believe a large portion of the player base of Roblox is on mobile. Like they're playing on their phone and playing on iPads and stuff like that. So to kind of open up like the ability for those users to create experiences would kind of create a new almost marketplace around the people using mobile.
Yeah, 100%. And the new generation is all like 100% on mobile. It's crazy. Like they really like. I think I'm from the 90s. I think you guys are definitely younger than me, probably the 2000s, right? But like anybody that was born after 2010, I think they're on their phone all the time. Um, and again, I'll go in another direction a little bit. I'm not sure like if I even want this feature. That maybe that's me being a old grumpy guy already in my 30s. But again, if you're thinking about the new generation and an engine for them, yeah, you want to go on the Roblox direction. You want to go more on that direction where it's again very easy to start. It's almost like the game's already there. You're just like modding it. But then if you really want to go a full and you can, and it is mobile first. Um, I personally like the web a lot. Um, as well. So I'd love for it to be web first. Imagine just like you have a game that you love and you can just share a link the same way you share a video with your friend. They can jump in and play. No 1 hour download time of like 50 gigabytes or something. Um, yeah, so like that's like sounds not sure if we ever get to this feature, but feels like a great direction to go in terms of the empowering more people to create games and potentially creating more creative games that I think we desperately need nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I guess doing something like that on the web, normally traditionally in the past, I've thought of the web builds that I've done with my engine where you kind of it's like Mscript in, you have to pack all the assets, it has to go into the browser, it's in storage somewhere. But you could do something kind of cool where you stream in assets. Like most engines support asset streaming from the disk, but you could asset stream from some cloud provider like AWS bucket or something. And you could kind of share these like larger experiences than just like little demos. And people don't have to wait to download the whole thing and play it.
Yeah, and like actually the web is set up for that because I mean, like every asset image, you're already like downloading them separately, not necessarily streaming them, but you can think about the game binary being something very small, which is usually is, and then you download the game binary, and then you have to download the assets separately, which is not the case for most games, right? Most games just bundle everything together, and there is one download. And yeah, like because the web forces like the experience has to be to start really fast. It has to be instantaneous. It's going to force developers to think about that differently. Okay, I'm going to load my game and I'm going to show the first screen super fast, and then I'm going to start downloading things in the background, and it's just a better experience for the user, right? I think everybody. Um, I remember I saw a post on X the other day uh, about buying a console in the '90s versus today. In the '90s, you'd buy a console and then you'd have your cartridge, and like you open the console, put it on the cartridge, jump into the TV, and that's it. Already play. And nowadays, like, okay, PS5, let me plug that in. Okay, need to download an update, need to create an account, need to add a credit card, need to download a 50 gig game. Maybe I'll play tomorrow. Um, like as a kid, it's just I think like ruining your Christmas experience. Um, Again, that's a sidetrack, but going back to web, because everybody would expect a website, a game should just load really fast. It kind of forces the developer to think about that, and you totally can. Is like you said, you stream assets, you only load what you need, you load things on the background. The web is already set up for that. And the crazy thing, we're already like with web GPU, you can run almost exactly the thing you run on PC on the web these days, but we don't have an engine for that um, yet, so most people don't do it.
Yeah, go ahead, Billy.
Um, I was gonna say I I have like aerospace engineering background. I'm doing like numerical methods for my thesis. I'm essentially trying to do it in like a boilerplate uh sort of way, so it's like very interchangeable and essentially like building blocks you swap in and out. But like on your point about the web, is there's these like complex numerical method solvers that will only like load exactly what's needed to run the calculations. I guess that's like kind of like the same idea because it's doing like 30 some pages worth of like output on like chemical reactions and whatnot, but it's instantaneous. Takes maybe 10 seconds to run like the full simulation.
Mhm.
But that's just like my experience with that.
Yeah, I think definitely this idea you load only what you need, right? And if you need another thing, you load it again. Um, and think about speed. So, for I'm not familiar with the environment, but running an entire simulation, numerical simulation, 10 seconds sounds really fast. And, imagine from a user, whoever's using this uh, tool, imagine if it takes 5 minutes. It's very boring work, right? Every time you hit a simulation, you have to go grab a coffee. Uh, oh, and maybe something's wrong and you have to run again and you have to grab another coffee. Um, so like being fast, I think is something that not always we think about, but it's always like the user always want that. So we should be trying to go like to load as fast as possible and to run as fast as possible.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting idea. I wanted to share this. I'll put this in chat. But there was someone on X, Ryan Flaherty was his name, who was working on a product called Via, which would basically just sit on top of Steam, and you could play Steam games without downloading them first. So as you run the game, it'll stream and download assets. And I chatted with him a little bit. It was more advanced than just like, even if the engine shipped one pack file, his tool could go in the pack file and stream out basically only the stuff that was needed from the pack file, because it's hooking into the actual like reads on a file system level. So I think stuff like that would be really cool. And kind of it does seem like there's a huge application in the web for a web first engine that's doing that like natively as part of the underlying engine.
Yeah. Well, I'm seeing the video. That's super impressive. Um, yeah, I think like I'm taking the easy route. He's taking the very hard route, which is, hey, let me make a game that was made not think about this at all, and then I'll hack my way around this and make it work, which is super impressive. But yeah, if you hadn't made a game with that in mind from the beginning, with the engine just being async all the time, right? Um, One thing, for instance, if you guys ever used Unity or Unreal, one thing you may notice that these engines load the tree of dependencies all at once, right? So if you have a scene with one character, this character has a hard reference to a texture, a mesh, and maybe every item on your game, this thing's going to be loaded all at once when you load the scene, right? Um, that's a very common mistake people make. But again, if the engine doesn't even give you the option, hey, everything's going to be async, everything's going to be a soft reference, everything's going to wait for it to be loaded, you can make it easier for your game to just load super fast. Um, so that's like something that I think could be pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree. Kind of, I guess going back to this original post that you made comparing your engine and Unity and the web, I wanted to touch on a little bit what your development cycle looks like as far as developing something cool and then sharing it with the world. How do you make time to kind of put these things out there and get attention on it? And is that something that you're kind of continually balancing?
Oh yeah, that's how do you do it? I don't know. You just like work long hours and always feel overwhelmed about not being able to do everything you want and share it and, and all that. Um, but it's something I think more people should do. Like I have a friend that built Proximo with me. I tell him that all the time. Man, you're making your game. You should be sharing. One, you get instant feedback, honest feedback. The internet is not gonna be gentle with you if your game works or not. And you build your audience, right? And it can inspire people. So it's really just like, and it can inspire you. I think that's the other thing. Like when something goes well, it motivates you to keep building. So that's why I do it. But yeah, to answer your question, you kind of have to, the way I do it at least is I set a target. Like for instance, I wanted to finish my animation system. I just had to do it, right? Um, and then I think about it. Okay, after I'm done with this, can I share? How can I share? And what would be an engaging way to share it that would make people pay attention? And really, this wasn't planned, but I was like, yeah, it's probably going to be faster than any agent just because it's way less code. And that's what I did. So I think like it took me a week and a half working on working nights to finish the animation system, about like 30, 40 hours of programming time. And then when I finished, I just spent the half of the week, um, and that's a couple of days to be honest, setting up the demo, right? So, and I did it as fast as I could. So for instance, there was no website. I just, I didn't know if this thing was uh, do well or not. So I was like, okay, let me just set this project in Unity super fast. Uh, Enable some optimization flags. The point is to show Unity as it is out of the box. I'll do that, I'll record a video, I'll do mine, I'll record a video, um, and then I'll compare. So that's the idea. I think like you set up small milestones and then you share. Um, and you do what works for you. So for instance, I'll even share probably the next one. Again, I want to make this meme game where you can do an auto battler on the web on your phone with maybe hundreds of thousands of entities. For that, I have to write a optimized animation system, one that probably is going to use the GPU more, to be honest, not really C. So I'll do that, and then I'll probably share something, and then go from there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of. I think it's an interesting balance to make. And I had been working in isolation for a couple years on my engine and I never posted anything about it. And then I haven't been super good at about it recently, but I've posted a couple things and it is cool to get engagement and get feedback back and forth online. Um, do you think like the best venue for kind of in progress technical work like that is going to be X or Twitter, or are there other websites or blogs, or do you recommend kind of writing articles? How do you recommend sharing stuff like that?
Yeah, I do right now. I do on X and Reddit, so I do post on Reddit. I usually get more hate there. It's but a lot of people they're nice as well. And the reason I do it, like you said, is just to save time. It's just fast. I don't have to, because if you're gonna write an article, it's gonna take some time, right? A couple hours to write an article that is worth reading, at the very least. The next thing that I'm gonna that I the next social media that I want to go back to, because I've been on YouTube for a long time, is YouTube. Uh, Maybe short form videos and longer form videos as well. And if you think about the amount of work uh, versus the amount of deep engagement you get on YouTube, it is more work to post anything there. You do get more deep engagement, right? So for instance, my post on X, technically, technically, X tells me it had 5 million views. It probably didn't, to be honest. Like actual engagement was probably like 50K something, which is, uh, I mean, it's great. Um, Whereas in YouTube, if you got 100,000 views, you got 100,000 views, almost for you. So I think, to answer your question, X I think is great because it's so easy to post. You can just try ideas really quickly. Uh, Everything that works on X kind of works on Reddit. Like same idea, you try something really quickly, you make a short post and you post there. And then YouTube is the next step in terms of commitment to sharing work, where you do have to make and edit a video um, that is possibly more engaging, but it's still not a lot of time. Um, as for articles, it's something that is worth doing if you really feel like writing, or if you have a couple of folks that do want to read what you write. Because the truth about the internet, as we know today, is that everything is algo driven. It's algorithm driven, right? It's not like the internet from the past where you would search a link and if it was a niche topic, you'd probably find something new, unfortunately. So, if you write an article, the chances are it's going to be lost on the wide sea of the internet. So you kind of you need social media to even drive people to your article, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Yeah, it seems like most of the time now that people write blog posts, they're kind of funneling traffic from other algorithm-driven platforms like Twitter, or I don't know. You see like Hacker News is not really algorithm-driven, but usually there's a lot of people posting personal blogs on there.
Yeah, I've heard about Hacker News. I'm not a user. That's the other thing. I think like much easier to post on a social media that you actually use and you want to use. You have to understand the algorithm. But yeah, that's how it works nowadays. Um, Not sure if it's great, but yeah, if you care about people knowing about your work, you kind of have to play the game. Uh, I guess it's something that I kind of learn by making games. I always say nowadays making games is the easy part. Letting people know, like making people aware of your game and wanting to buy it is the hard part. Oh my God. That's way harder these days.
100%.
Yeah.
I was holding for a second. I couldn't tell if Dan was about to unmute.
Oh yeah, here I can ask question. Yeah, so um we talked a little you talked a little bit about AI and how you were like the part of the first group who like built this AI agent for this game, right? So I want to ask about your opinion on where do you see AI coupling with games and how that or at least how you see the future for AI and games together?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'll say one thing first. Nobody knows. That's anybody saying anything on the internet. Nobody has any idea about the future in general. I think especially AI because it's moving so fast. So what I'm about to say is most likely wrong. That said, for games, I kind of view AI again being like this groundbreaking tool, almost like engines and even softwares like Maya and 3ds Max and Blender were. Um, so the generative capabilities are getting better. I imagine the future, maybe like even just 5 years from now, to be honest, game developers will be using AI to generate assets on the games. Whether this is good or not, I'll leave this discussion open. Don't want to get there, but people are going to do it if it's available. So hopefully it's we do make something good out of it. But I think we're going to be generating 3D assets. We're going to be generating 3D animations. The AI is going to be generating code as well. The good future that I imagine with it is that just like the engines, it empowers more people to create games, and the market just grows with less cost, which is something we really need on the game industry nowadays because I think it's been over bloated for the past years. That's why we're seeing so many layoffs. So that's a good version of the future. The bad version is the AI makes the entire game, and then we're competing with like, you have artists trying to make something special, competing with a machine that spits games every 2 weeks. That future I don't want to see, but who knows?
No, yeah, that's
Yeah.
certainly a very controversial topic because I've seen
Yeah.
many games already using AI art or trying to get train their AI on their voice actors so they don't have to pay them anymore. It's like so much crazy stuff. But yeah, I think I agree with you with I really hope AI starts going into a more part of developer side where it helps developers create a better game rather than AI creating the game for everybody. But thank you. Thank you for asking my question.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, and I do hope on this topic that again, these AIs are trained with artists' work, so I think we have to find a way to pay those artists or to keep them on the loop. I hope AI is a tool for artists as well in the future to make them make fast art while still having their vision. But that's maybe wishful thinking on my part. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting the relationship between like the intellectual property and the training data, and if there's maybe an opening for a better system. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, so to kind of push us towards closing remarks, I'm curious what your methodology is when you approach hard problems. How do you solve hard problems? How do you do the prerequisite research? Kind of what is your process like?
Um, you this is not going to be inspiring at all. You solve hard problems by breaking them down into smaller problems that your brain can understand, which is a hard thing to do, right? So, yeah, like if something feels overwhelming, one, your brain doesn't want to do it, and two, there's no way. Like literally, I do think of our brains as a limited capacity computer, which means you can run out of memory, right? And then you're just going to be confused and you're going to solve the problem. So I think like first you spend processing time and memory to break down the problem to understand it. Uh, how that works probably varies so much by person and the solution. Maybe like if it's an open-ended idea, you have to research first. Let's say, um, let's say I am, yeah, let's say I want to build this next generation engine. First step is to even define what that is at a aspirational level. Second step is even to define something I can build with the time that I have. With that would involve a lot of research, going back and forth on the internet, see what's there, imagine what it could be, trying to find a justification for like what which ideas would be better. And then once you have that, something that you think you can make, you're probably wrong. You're probably already overscoping, cut it in half, cut it in half again, and then you break down this and you start working, and then you pick the like the animation system. Okay, I'll just do the animation system. Do it all the way and up to the end, and then I'll think about the next thing, and then you kind of repeat the process. Okay, what's the next thing now? It's that, and then you go from there. That's how I do it, at least.
Yeah. I guess, yeah. Kind of my final question would be, what makes a good programmer or engineer, and what advice do you have for all of us to reach that level?
Endless curiosity. Any real programmer, any person that is really, really good at their craft, they just like it so much that they never get bored of it over time. You just like keep wanting to learn stuff. So first thing is identifying which area is this for you. For me, it's programming in games specifically. I don't even have the same curiosity for the web or backend. It is like game and graphics and programming. Um, if you do identify this, just honestly just keep following your curiosity and building stuff and studying in your free time. The difference over the years is massive. I remember to this day, I was 24, first job out of college that I was in, and I remember a manager at the time. He was 28, looking at me. I was talking about like how I was learning Go and backhand because again, the game needed more online services at the time, and I wanted to know how they worked. And I remember him telling me, "Oh, I wish I was young like you, so I would still have the energy to study." And I thought, man, you're 28, you're pretty young. And also, like years after, I still want to learn. And like the difference in like the stuff that we both build over the years and the career is really big. So don't underestimate the power of just showing up every day or every other day, following your curiosity and getting better at your craft. 10 years from now, uh, is going to make a lot of difference.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Um, well, yeah, let me open it up one more time for any questions in the room. All right. Well, yeah, thank you so much for joining us. This was really awesome. It was great to have you.
Same. Thanks for having me. Yeah, and it was great talking to you all.
Yeah. All right. Well, have a good day, everybody.
See ya.